PPE, in my opinion, the best degree. I think it used to be called the Modern Greats.
Philosophy, politics and economics, modern greats.
It's composed of philosophy, politics and economics.
So you do a bit of each in the first year, and then at the end of the first year you can carry on with all three, or a lot of people drop one of the three, so then you have the two that you learn about in a bit more depth, basically. Do I like PPE? Yes. Luckily, probably makes my life easier. I do like it.
Do you like PPE? Yes. I love PPE. I love it. I think for me, I was the person who'd do maths and history at school, and I think that's what I really like about it. I get to write my proper essays in politics and philosophy, and I get to really play around with numbers in economics.
One of the things that I always found quite strange about university before I came was the idea that you just have to pick one subject to study and that's all you ever get to study again. I didn't know what one thing I was most interested in. So I guess PPE was quite a nice way of kind of covering all my bases, so I was least likely to get it wrong.
But I think it is nice to have that balance and have a bit more breadth than you might get from single subject degrees where you have to specialise a bit more, a bit sooner.
There are downsides. Gets quite a bad rep, PPE, not entirely unjustified. But it's also nice doing a course that so many other people do. You know, there's hundreds of other PPE students across the university, which is quite nice, even if a lot of them are just future consultants. My favourite one is probably politics, just because it's actually important. I mean, as much as I love philosophy, politics is actually important.
Is probably philosophy, just because, especially with ethics and moral questions, they are, I find, really, really fascinating, and just feel very relevant to what we care about, why we care about things.
And I'm one of those weirdos who just absolutely loves I could chat all day about anything vaguely political. And, you know, often I'll have conversations with just other people on other courses about, you know, politics, about the government and Brexit. And for them, that's just like an idle thing to talk about, a hobby. But that's what I get to study for my degree. And I absolutely love that. I think it's really, really fun.
So this question always changes for me. I think it's totally dependent on the papers I'm doing that term. There have been various times where each of them have been my favourite. Currently, I'm loving politics. I really enjoy theory of politics. And economics is not my favourite because I'm doing macro, but when I'm doing micro, it bumps up a bit. I'm also really enjoying philosophy as well because I'm doing ethics. So for me, it's so dependent upon the papers. I think I find something I like in each of the subjects and things I don't like.
On my least favourite, that's an easy one. That would be the one I dropped, which is economics. And I knew that economics wasn't for me from the first time I got an economics essay marked and sent back to me. It's an essay I put a lot of effort into and I thought was really good. It was a nice discussion about, you know, the free market and redistribution. And the feedback I got from it was too many words, not enough graphs for an essay. And it was downhill from there, quite frankly.
And my least favourite, probably economics. I'm undecided as of yet. We'll see. Tutorials are actually a really nice way to learn.
The tutorials vary between the subjects and also just from tutor to tutor.
They tend to be you and your tutor and maybe one or two others. Sometimes they're actually one-on-one, especially as you get into like years 2 and 3.
But for the most part, they'll be quite discursive. So you'll write an essay in advance and submit it, and then your tutorials will kind of take the form of your tutor discussing your essay with you and discussing the topic with you.
The tutor will pick you up on something you've said and will be like, so what are the connotations of that? So what, for example, or what does this mean? And it's basically often a clarification process of your argument and your thought.
With the exception of economics, where a lot of the time you'll be sort of doing questions and like solving maths problems in front of the tutor, because economics is the devil's subject.
For economics, I'd say it's much more teaching based. They will sit down and teach us if we get stuck, for example. So they like us to lead it, but the tutors have quite a present role in that. And it feels more like kind of school learning of like actually being told. what is the answer and what to do. And we get into big discussions when we're doing the essays, but on the maths, that's more what it's like. I was terrified for tutorials before I came to Oxford, but they really are a discussion.
And they're definitely not as scary as they can seem, I think, before you have them, in terms of it's not about being right, it's not about having a definitive answer. I mean, they actively want you to be able to change your mind, because that shows a certain open-mindedness that just thinking that you've got the right answer and you've done it and you've reached the end doesn't. So it's definitely not about winning an argument or being right in a debate. It's just about having like an involved discussion, and they can be really, really interesting, I would say. It's a nice way to learn.
For example, I was doing an essay on morality the other day, and we ended up talking about the ethics of AI by the end of it. So really interesting discussions come out of it, and things that wouldn't have come up from your essay. So it's a jump, your essay and the tutorial is a jumping point off that topic, if that makes sense.
Is everyone posh? I'm probably not the best advert for answering that question because of my voice. I promise I'm not as posh as I sound.
No, not everyone's posh. You got your full range of people, as with any degree at Oxford. Of course, it being Oxford, you got the full spectrum. But no, there's every type of person doing PPE.
No, not everyone is posh. I mean, obviously, I think it's quite well known that Oxbridge and a lot of other unis do have an issue with diversity and representation.
Posh people are horrendously overrepresented at Oxford, and I think most people would acknowledge that.
But I think that's something that they are really actively trying to change.
PPE is not, it's certainly not just for, public school English boys, because it's one of the courses that gets the most applicants every year, and because there's no subjects required for it, philosophy, politics and economics, it's all something that they kind of expect you to be starting from scratch. Anyone can apply, and so you get applicants from a broad range of backgrounds. I mean, if anything, these days, most posh people are really quite ashamed of it, and would rather assimilate to the less posh way of acting.
And it's not that; it's all kind of Bullingdon Club, boys' club type people, and definitely that stereotype about PPE. E&M maybe a bit more true.
But no, I definitely wouldn't say that's something to be put off by.
If PPE is what you're interested in, you should absolutely not let that put you off.
How do you feel walking in the steps of great men like David Cameron? And I would argue great women too.
Oh God! On my first night at Oxford, I was sort of at dinner and I was talking to someone, and I mentioned that I did PPE, and the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, so you want to be Prime Minister then?"
It's a strange degree. There's a lot of clout with the name, but I don't think about it too much. I'm doing it because I like it, rather than because whoever did it before. I hope not to end up like a lot of them, and maybe some of the less famous ones I hope to end up like, but can't say I'm modelling myself on our government.
The thing is, so there are a lot of politicians and media figures who did PPE, and people will often kind of cite those as a reason why PPE is so bad. But the thing is, those are actually the kind of more, what's the word? Less soulless and self-interested PPEists, because a lot of PPEists end up in consulting or banking and kind of behind the scenes just making millions of pounds, and those are the worst ones. Be thankful that at least people like David Cameron, I'm reluctant to say it, but people like David Cameron went into kind of the public sphere.
People are studying PPE because they're interested in it, not because they all want to be Prime Minister.
For every David Cameron, there'll be 100 PPE students who don't go on to, cause Brexit. But we're not all like David Cameron. If you only listen to one thing I say, it's that we're not all like David Cameron. Please listen to that.